So it's every situation, I think, is very, very different.
Yeah, you can check out that full piece with Ronan O'Gara up on offtheball.com. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
Did you have any idea that he was... Did you know Ronan was associated with Adidas? Did you know that?
You could guess it maybe but...
I mean, it was just something subtly
there. He put on a tweet, you're talking about social media, he was thanking Adidas for all the free gear a week or two ago. Right. So, yeah, he's big white Adidas top on him.
If you heard that, we were chatting about social media just before you came in, and Rory McIlroy was saying that the penny has dropped, that he suddenly realised that not trawling through social media to pick up on the abuse. Owen is endorsing the idea that, listen, and maybe he's absolutely bang on the money, that it doesn't matter whether he's 20 or 30 or 40, he's made the realisation now, and the best thing he can do is stay off it.
Yeah, it's divided opinion, hasn't it, social media, and for some of the rugby players I've seen, there's been certain kind of moments where they've agreed that they won't go on social media or post anything before games and during tournaments and stuff. Yeah.
A couple of days.
And it's right, because certainly after a match, if you have a few beers on board, it's the wrong time to go near it. But it can have, no matter who you are, it can have a negative effect on what you, we all want to hear nice things said about us. Some people say they block it out. It's like players over the years I've heard saying, I never read the papers. You mightn't read them, but you hear some of the negative stuff, and it can have an effect at times. And
do you find, as a pundit, you almost have a rush of blood to the head after a game and you have to stay off your phone a small bit before taking to Twitter?
Sometimes, yeah. I'll have a look and see, and really I think I find Twitter, I'm on Instagram but not active at all, and the same on Facebook, but I like Twitter because I like seeing the reaction of other people and reading other people's opinions on the game and stuff. And inevitably people send me messages sometimes, say, I got a few last week saying that I was quite negative and moany and stuff like that. So,
but yeah, Irish people love to analyse the analysts, and
yeah, look, it's amazing, because most of the people, I never mind constructive criticism or someone actually genuinely saying, look, what you said there was wrong, but it's amazing how people, and sometimes it's highlighted by other people, where they say things about you on Twitter and they're following you, but they won't kind of link you in the tweet or something like that. And
I can't decide whether that's good etiquette or bad etiquette, that if there's something shitty to say about you.
I do respect people if they put you in there and they say to you, I think you're wrong about this or wrong about that, or that was a bad call, or it wasn't a yellow card and you're talking out your wherever, and that's fine. But I think a lot of people use it just to really have a rant and insult people or have a go off people who they've never really done anything themselves at any level. It's not about, I'm not saying you have to be a professional athlete and play for your country, but I respect everyone that plays sport at any level, and you know, you value people's opinion, because some of my mates never really played sport, but they're very, very much into their sport and they're very intelligent in their observations of what's going on. So Twitter and social media and all that stuff can be reckless at times.
Well, the people, I never blame the platform, I have to say. There are people behind all that, obviously.
Yeah, and sometimes there's people up there with no profile or no picture themselves, and they're continually abusing it. And if you look at their timeline, they have a habit of giving out about everything. Do you know what I mean? Genuinely, you put yourself in a position, for me now, if I'm doing commentating, you know, I think I'm good. I used to think I was lacking confidence in it, and it's not that I'm cocky or anything like that. I'm probably my own worst critic, but sometimes people will have a pop off you, and that's what social media is like. And unfortunately, sometimes you are better staying away from it. Particularly, there's been lots of stories about GAA players coming in, first thing they grab is their phone, and the Cork goalkeeper a few years ago, the under-20 goalkeeper, and when he made a number of mistakes and he picks up the phone and there's horrendous abuse there, and that can have a terrible effect, because doing something wrong or having a bad game has its own effects on the player, and then you kind of add that with people online who have a go off you, and it's difficult. You can't really. On occasions, I've kind of said to people, "Would you say it to my face?" And most of the time they don't. I'm dreading the day I say that to someone, and there's a big 6'5" bodybuilder on the other end. If I go and meet him somewhere and he knocks the head off me, I saw. But it was.
Don't be going to meet anybody anywhere, Quinlan.
No. But look, it's fine. Some of it is good, and do you know what? Sometimes you engage with someone and you kind of say, "Look, this is what I thought, and they actually you end up having a bit of banter and nearly a laugh with them, you know. Some people's, I find with social media, people fire stuff out very quickly without thinking, and it's sometimes it can be very hard, particularly on the sports person, you know what I mean? For me, it doesn't really matter. Brian Moore actually was having an argument with someone on Twitter yesterday, the former England rugby player, about Greta Thunberg, and there was a debate going on about that, and he literally said he got involved in the conversation, and this guy who had no name or profile picture of himself basically asked some other person, would they say it to his face, and Brian Moore said, I will. And so it can be humorous and very good at times, you know what I mean?
You doubted yourself as a commentator?
I doubted myself. Yeah, sometimes I do. Listen, it's the same when you play sport. I doubted myself a lot when I was playing rugby. Confidence and self-belief, and that's why it's a totally different level where Rory McIlroy is. I can believe, no matter who it is in sport, that you will have negative self-analysis. You'll have that negative voice in your head that can rattle you, and then you look at something, you read something, and you focus on that negative thing, and it can have an effect on you. Of course I doubt myself. I believe what keeps me kind of sane or enjoying the job is that you try and give an honest opinion, and that's not always right. But of course there's always people who disagree with you. I don't mind that. Constructive criticism is great. But the part of firing out abuse at people online from people who've never actually been in any sort of an environment, I'm not talking about a sporting environment where you've had to perform under pressure and you've made mistakes. That's life, ups and downs of it. Cyrus Christie stuff 2 years ago, like, that's a disgrace, where people are actually, the guy gave away an own goal, he gets racial abuse online. There was one guy started a thread and a post of trying to drum up support for his racist abuse, you know, and that stuff is very difficult, but it's unregulated, you know. You can say what you like, and people can create fake profiles and stuff like that. But usually, I think there's a common theme here, that the ones that are doing the abuse, if you look, as I said, if you look down the timeline, they're giving out about politics, they're giving out about sport, they're giving out about the weather, they're giving out about actors, they're giving out about a movie. It's just constant, and really it's...
You get to a place where you're comfortable. So, like in life, you get to a place where you're comfortable. Like at some point, you get maybe not comfortable, but maybe you get a bit more easy with it. But as a player, generally, like, you can retire from early 30s to whatever.
There's less stress as a player, because players really, there's a massive focus on performance, and you're playing for your future and your job and a whole lot. Of course, this is my job now, and I do commentary at the weekend for Virgin Media, and there's 700,000 or 800,000 people watching the game. Sometimes up to 1 million. The English game could be well over 1 million people watching. I'm sure it will be. And you're the one that's going into everybody's sitting room, and you're kind of course there's a nervousness and an anxiety about that, and I have a natural anxiety anyway, so, and I do tend to kind of beat myself up and overanalyze. So sometimes you say things in the spur of the moment. Commentary is reactive analysis. It's not easy. When you're sitting in the studio and you watch the half and you have an ad break and you can chat with your fellow pundits and say, what do you think of that, or this or that, you have time to react to it. Commentary is reactive analysis, so you have to be careful that sometimes your opinion kind of can waver, like that was a yellow card, then you see the replay and you say, you know, seeing it again. So it's quite difficult, and people can jump on that. But by and large, I meet people all the time who say, God, I love listening to the match, and you made it simple, and that's nice to hear, as opposed to maybe sometimes a few people who say you're rubbish or whatever.
And sometimes things you say off mic gets picked
well,
up.
I kind of, sometimes, so, we'll just move on swiftly.
At least I've said it to your face.
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
Right, we've gone off on an off tangent. We've only a couple of minutes left, but Jeremy Guscott sat in the chair that you're sat in last week and said that Ireland were going to win the Six Nations, and there was certainly a large part of me that was thinking he's just saying it to be nice and polite. Is there more evidence for that now on the back of last weekend, or what are you thinking?
I think so, yeah. Like, you'd have to be a little bit more optimistic, obviously. I'm afraid to kind of get too optimistic because of what happened at the World Cup, but I think there is a new feel about the group, and that can happen with you see in the Premier League sometimes when you change managers and there's a new group and there's new ideas, it can just revitalise players. I think the biggest problem last year was a lot of it was players' form as well. It just kind of dipped right across the board. And I've said this before, it wasn't that players were playing terribly, it was just they weren't playing brilliantly as a group. And you have to do that when you're playing at top level. So I think there's certainly more optimism, but I'd be cautious about it because even though England are missing Billy Vunipola and probably Manu Tuilagi now, Anthony Watson, they're missing a few of their kind of big influencers in their games.
Jones is saying that Slade and Tuilagi possibly back.
Yeah, well, for any team in the world who could pick the likes of Tuilagi or Billy Vunipola, they just bring so much power. I think that the challenge for Ireland going to Twickenham is probably that intensity and power that England trying to kind of smash teams, and they've always tried to do that with their size and their power. So if Ireland can do that, I think they can take a lot out of the Welsh game. They need to be certainly a little bit more ruthless and take their opportunities and build more pressure. They've been, the first two games probably turned over the ball a little bit too easily at times. So they're working their way back a little bit. I wouldn't get too overly excited about it, but I certainly think that they have a good chance in Twickenham, there's no doubt.
With a minute to go, I sort of put down to ask you about who your Irish player of the Six Nations so far is going to be, until I was reminded outside that there's one player you've given man of the match to in both games so far, so I'm assuming that that's the answer.
No, Shane Jennings was sitting beside me, and I said this to a few people last week. I thought Stander was brilliant, in fairness, and you're kind of writing down a couple of players and you're thinking of it again. You've got to react pretty quickly because sometimes it's not that clear cut, and so I'm dragging him into agreeing with just the big moments that CJ had in the game and the impact he played, and the player should not get man of the match just because he got it last week. I just felt that he was the one that. And of course, I've my decision made when Andrew Conway scores a try. So
he would have pushed him close.
Again, people don't realise that. You know, you've got to try and get something over to the director pretty quickly, because they've got to get it to World Rugby and it's got to be announced and all that kind of stuff. So Andrew Conway scores a try about a minute, 2 minutes after we made our decision, and but I thought he was incredible as well. So
Ronan O'Gara talks about Conway's form in his Examiner column this morning, that he's now beginning to fulfil the promise. Like as a schoolboy, everybody looked at him as
what he's doing is making good decisions. It isn't just the speed and the energy he brings, because he's 100% all the time. It's just making good decisions, putting those little grubber kicks through, just tracking on the inside, making good runs with the ball, and his overall game defensively very strong. Good read a couple of times coming out of the line to make those tackles. So he's been superb. But I think right across the board last week there was a lot of big performances from the team. Kind of a consistent level of high performance. And it was needed. I think they got fortunate probably with a couple of mistakes Wales made, and they, you know, when Thomas Williams drops the ball and Ireland get that bit of pressure where Furlong scores, and maybe with the Josh van der Fleer try, I still think it was a try. I heard Dricko during the week saying he probably should have kicked it post, but there's a different feel about them. I think they seem to feel good about themselves again, and Robbie Henshaw I thought was brilliant until he went off. So
very well, yeah.
And with a back three, if you have Larmour or Conway, there's a real buzz about them every time they get the ball, you know. So I think Jacob Stockdale needs to play better. He still has that potential to score lots of tries. And
is he one player that you'd look at that could actually be removed from that team now?
Well, he needs to be more active and probably get his hands on the ball more, because he's an incredible finisher. But he hasn't scored a try for a while yet, and for Ireland, and you know, with Earls and Addison, and they're kind of pushing him hard from behind as well. So it's kind of, there's a fair bit of pressure coming from behind with a number of players there. But the back three is pretty exciting. Yeah.
All right, and an exciting game that we'll look ahead in your company next week. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks.
Thanks very much for that. Alan Quinlan, as always, on a Friday morning. It's 9:02 on this Friday. Owen and myself back in a moment.